Like, I actually use this to make phone calls. It's like, oh, novel.
Can I give you that one?
And this one as well, absolutely right here. And this one, is this somebody?
Yeah.
Which way is the record? Is it on this?
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. Move this way. All right, here we go. Who's up first? Welcome. Thank you for sitting around.
I guess this is an obvious question. What's the most, I would say, unique thing that happened in the upcoming season? Because, I mean, you have all these crazy customers. You've seen the Ming stuff that's gone on. Like,
I'll be honest with you. The most unique thing that happens in the first season happens right in the first episode. And it's something you never fucking see on television. There's a before and after picture of Brian Johnston. Because in the pilot, in the first episode of season 3, Lou Ferrigno comes to the store and trains Brian for a while. So Brian is brave enough to whip out an iPad and show pictures of himself from before he gained a bunch of weight. And it's like 180 degrees. He looks like a different person. And that, to me, you never see that on TV. Nobody ever goes, look at how bad I look and shit. Or look at how good I used to look or something like that.
Did he still have a beard back then?
He didn't. So it's just like, he doesn't even look like him. He looks like his kid. So when I saw that in the episode, I was like, fuck, nobody ever does that on TV, man. I was kind of into it. I thought it was brave. I called him up. I was like, dude, that's ballsy. And he was like, just own it, bitch. And I was like, I've never been able to own it. I hate it. I'm ashamed of it. But that to me is, I mean, right then people reading it going, that's the best thing that happens all year. But to me, I don't know, it was brave. I'd never seen that on TV before. Somebody kind of being like, yeah, this is what I used to look like. And one of them is like a topless shot. So like you see his nipples. It's kind of hot.
It was a selfie, wasn't it?
It was a selfie from back in the day.
How'd you get Lou Ferrigno involved?
We reached out, man. We've seen McCons for years, and I think it was last year at one of the cons. We ran into him and chit-chatted about, hey, man, would you like to be on the show? And he was like, yeah, maybe. And boom, it happened. So it's this year. We pull in a few people from the world of comics. Lou Ferrigno's there. George Perez is on an episode. Scott Snyder, Greg Capullo do Podbusters with us, where we sit around and talk about the new Batman book. So, you know, it's in a show called Comic Book Men, and you go into season 3. As much as the show is all about the boys, you know, you want to acknowledge, like, hey, man, there's a deep community out there, and, like, here's some fucking cool faces from them. And we talked about Perez, like, so many times over the course of the first 2 seasons. To have him show up in season 3 just kind of made sense. You get to see Walt go to pieces over him and shit. The closest I've ever seen Walt to being like, ah, on George Perez, who was just like, now stop, now. He was very modest. It was kind of sweet to see.
So, on your podcast, you said when you started the show, the guys were surprised anybody would want to watch them.
Yes.
And they're just regular guys and whatever. Do you think personally, has it changed them being friends with them? Has it made a difference?
No. That's the nice thing about this, the podcast, the show. Like, they haven't changed. And not in a kind of like, oh, they're still the fucking same. We all change and evolve as we grow. But the fundamental key points that make up Walter Flanagan have not changed in, as far as, by my estimation, in 25 fucking years. And that doesn't make him like, he hasn't evolved. He just knows who he is and always knew who he was. This was the guy that kind of showed me or taught me without sitting me down and saying and teaching me. He was the guy that showed me that, like, you could enjoy comics out loud and fucking proud. I was about 18 years old. I started hanging out with Walt. Walt was a couple years older than me. And he was a metal kid in school. Long hair, fucking denim jackets with fucking Metallica paintings on the back and shit like that. Real hard ass, hung out with a hard ass crew. And then when I started hanging out with him at the rec center, talking to him at the rec center, somebody was like, he likes comic books. And I was like, get the fuck out of here. I used to like comic books, but then I put them away for high school. And so over the course of our friendship, I was like, you never like got weirded out by your comics and don't want people thinking you were a kid or whatnot? And he goes, fuck no. He's going, what's more badass than The Dark Knight Returns? Like, I'll fucking put that up against anything. I don't give a shit. Somebody says, oh, comics are for kids. Fuck you, read this. So he was a guy who knew exactly who he was, man. And like that to me was absolutely attractive because I was like, I want to be like that person, that insanely self-confident. And not like I'm better than people. He's just like, I know who I am. I know what I like. And I don't give a shit what people say. This is who I am and this is what I like. So that guy hasn't changed in fucking 25 years. He's still very much the same person. You know, he's got a nice couch now and a pool and shit. But other than that, he's pretty much the same guy. Bry has remained Bry forever. Ming and Mike's still the same guys. Yeah, it hasn't changed. I mean, the show is successful enough, but not to the point where it's like they're Duck Dynasty or something like that, where they're kind of like, what do you guys do in your private life? Nobody gives a shit about their private lives. In fact, they're like, stop telling us. They don't want to hear about their private life at all. So because the show is popular enough to make a season 3, but not insanely popular, where it's just like the money's being thrown at them from left and right and shit, you've seen no change in position or attitude. They're still the same people that they are, and that's kind of heartening. Man. It would be really sad to see them go Hollywood at the ratings they're at. You know what I'm saying? Like if they had Walking Dead ratings, I'd be like, you're right, go Hollywood. But the ratings they're at, I don't know if it justifies being like, you can't fuck with the comic book, man. And these guys are never those dudes anyway. Like you're talking about people who know exactly who they are, but generally didn't have the self-confidence to kind of pursue it. Like as much as Walter and Brian have always been role models and heroes to me, the one thing they could never do was start. They're not self-starters. So like that was me. I'm the ignition guy. So I could be like, ooh, let's do this, man. Sometimes you just need somebody to push you, and I was the push guy. So I'm glad they haven't changed. You can hear them on their podcast on Tell 'em Steve Dave. Like so, as opposed to just watching the TV show, if you listen to the podcast, you hear their fucking inner psyche all this time, and they are the same people they are when they started the podcast like 5 years ago or whenever it was, 3 or 4 years ago. But that's nice. It's absolutely nice to see that they haven't become assholes and stuff. You know, this is a business where they throw a lot of monies and favors at you and stuff and let you do things that other people can't, and it turns some people into fucking pricks, and so far these guys haven't been that at all.
Well, the store looks great. I mean, years ago, I want to say 10 years ago, me and my best friend took the pilgrimage down twice.
Get out of
to
here.
get down, we drove 4 hours, down there, spent the day, hung out there, and it looked so much nicer now.
Yeah.
I mean, we met.
Well, there are
back
cameras
then.
in there, so
Yeah.
we're like, let's fucking put a counter
I was like-
back here.
We're like, that doesn't look like the store we were in.
Yeah.
But it looks great.
The idea, thank you. The idea of they added the second counter last season because they're like, rather than do all the transactions up here, since the show is so transactional, people coming in trying to sell stuff, they're like, let's build a second counter in the back, and we went for it, and he was able to break it up a little bit better. It just looks visually interesting. But Walter hated the second counter and still does. He was like, they're taking it out, right? I'm like, no, dude, this is it. He's like, why do we need a second counter? He's that, and one of those other things I love about him, it's like, you got a TV show. Like, you'd imagine you'd be like, woohoo, but instead he's like, why is this counter here? You couldn't wait for the show to be done. I mean, I tease him about it, but like, the fact that he does the show at all is a real fucking favor. He ain't into this shit. He don't want to be on TV. He's like, everything that Walter does, we kind of push him into, except for comics. Like that, he'll go forward on his own volition. But even on Tell 'em Steve Dave on the podcast, he was like, I'll just do it to help Brian, and Brian will stop doing it after a couple episodes, and that'll be that. But now he's in it for the long haul because Brian won't stop. And the same thing with the show. Like initially I was like, they're going to do a show. And he was like, no, they're not. Click. He didn't want no part of it. So I was like, please, dude. Like this is like the last magic trick I have up my sleeve is like somehow we're getting a show, not just a TV show, but a show on the network that we watch, The Walking Dead, whatever. So he went for it and it kind of like, all right, I'll do it because this means something to you. And every season, he's the glue. You watch the show, the dude turns on and has to lead conversation. He leads the transactions. And it's just like, he's normally not that guy. But the fact that he's doing it is a strong testimony to our friendship because he's like, this means something to you, I'll do it. Okay. And the money's nice, don't get me wrong. Like, he gets a check, but not enough where it offsets what to him is absolute inconvenience, i.e. having anyone in the store, let alone, fucking camera crew. It's like, customers? So the idea of having, like, all those people in cameras. Yeah, you know what I'm saying. He's not Joe fucking friendly, but he does it every fucking season so far. And I mean, it sounds weird to say, but I feel like he does it for me. Like, that's the only reason. If I was like, well, I don't care about this, he'd be like, good, we're done. So I think that's another reason that they haven't, like, gotten carried away, because it's just not in their makeup,
Would you say that there's anything you've had to fight either for or against because it's a reality show?
The only thing we fought for, it was last season we had some problems. They brought in some different people to shoot the first half of the season, and they didn't get the boys at all, and they were the ones that wanted to do these on-the-fly interviews. And that was like the only place that we kind of butted heads, because I was like, why do that? Everyone does that. We have a way to get away without doing it. Let's not do it. And for a while, we were getting pushed back, like, no, we'd like to understand these items more. They're like, look, you understand the people that come into the store. The people watching the show may not. That was the philosophy in the first season. But by the time you get to the second season, you figure out who the audience is, and they're all familiar with this stuff. There's nobody watching the show going like, it's impenetrable for me. It's like they'll figure out, oh, these guys like this kind of stuff. So the argument was like, we don't really need somebody backing up on camera going like, I'm selling this because it used to mean a lot to me, but I want to go on a vacation. They kind of do that in the transaction. So there were some butting heads about that last year, and then they went away, like it never made air and stuff. So that was cool. I mean, that's the nice thing about AMC is they're like, if you're passionate, this is the hill you want to die on, if that means that much to you, fine, we'll let it go. So they've been great creative partners to work with, but they haven't been like, do whatever you want. You know, they definitely have had constrictions. Thank you. Constraints along the way, but nothing all that bad. And there was only one other time where I like called up, and it was about, again, the creative team that's gone. But we had Stan Lee on the show last season, and at one point there was a piece that ran in the New York Times blog. They'd come down while we were shooting, and they wrote about Stan being there, and I wasn't there because I was doing something on the West Coast, so it was the boys and Stan. And they referred to like Stan was talking to a kid on camera. They were, rolling and stuff, and the kid asked him something about Spider-Man or Marvel, and he was sitting there telling him. And then the people behind the scenes were like, all right, we got that, let's go. And like moved on, and we're like, dude, we got that, let's go. That's movie talk. Like once these cats start talking, you don't fucking jump in. Like that's the deal here. It's like there's no script. These cats aren't necessarily insanely TV friendly, but when you turn on a camera and let them be themselves, they will generate a fucking show. It's unscripted that way. So it's one thing to be like, Stan, we need you to stand over here, and then we turn on the cameras. It's another thing when cameras are rolling to cut off the, fucking comic book Mark Twain from talking to a child about comic books. It's just like, you're defeating the whole fucking purpose of this show if you shut Stan Lee up, And plus, he's 93. He don't live in Red Bank. He came to Red Bank to do us a solid, and you're going to tell him, like, hey, you're done, old man. Like, that drove me nuts. So I called up AMC. Mary Conlon was our exec, and I was just like, there are very few people in this world that I actually give a fuck about, that I admire, that I look up to, and Stan Lee is one of them. And Stan Lee, I'd like to consider a friend, and you fucked up my friendship with Stan Lee. I said, I don't even know what I'm going to do now. I was like, did you read this article in the New York Times, how he was treated down there? And boom, just like that, AMC got rid of that creative team and got our old creative team back. They had been on another show. By the time we got picked up, our season 1 creative team had went on to another show, so we had to start season 2 with somebody else. Then they got rid of that team, and we got our old team back. So AMC, like every step of the way, has been like, look, we get it. Like if you get passionate enough about it, and they could tell that, like I was like, this is Stan fucking Lee. He's an American icon. He's not a prop, and this is not a fucking television show. It is a television show, but like it's unscripted. It's not an episode of Happy Days where Stan has to hit the jukebox at a certain point, so the music goes on. Like, let him fucking talk, particularly to a fucking kid about comics. And so they were like, we get it, Kevin, we get it. And right away, everything changed. So they were so sweet. They've been really, really cool to work with, man. But those are the only 2 instances I could think of where I had to get my dander up. And I felt like it was for the good of the show. It wasn't like, my boys need a jet, you pricks. Like, it was more like, this is protecting what we're trying to accomplish with the show.
So it's creating more of that reality atmosphere that is kind of absent from a lot of reality television.
I mean, I can't even point to other shows and be like, they're not real, because the moment you bring a camera in, it's artifice. Like, that's why I like that AMC calls it unscripted, because it takes it out of reality, because reality seems like a really ridiculous word the moment you're like, okay, we're all going to be there at 6, and then we're going to bring cameras, and there'll be a snack table and shit like that. That ain't reality. Reality is like it just happened, totally. And somebody just happened to have a camera there on or something like that. So by calling it unscripted, it feels a little better. Maybe it's like, just a play on words or something like that. But to me, it's absolutely true. There is no script. There is a schedule, and as much as we all have to show up at a certain point and whatnot, and once the camera goes on, then it's up to the boys. If they don't say anything interesting, or if nothing interesting fucking happens, all that shit's wasted. And the good news is, because they'd been podcasting for like 3 years prior to that, they were sharp as tacks. Like, that's what we heard, the report back on the first season, which made me so proud of my boys, was, because Original Media, our partners in the show, they produce a lot of reality TV, including like the Crocodile Hunters or Alligator Men or whatever the fuck, where dudes go out and hunt gators and shit. So these cats are like used to shooting. They shoot like competition shows as well, those reality shows. And then I heard back like right after the first season, they're like, what's amazing about your guys is your guys can do things that most normal people on reality shows can't do. I was like, what? Like talk. They can just talk. Like most people on reality shows, like the reason they sit you down and have a camera in your face and they're asking you pointed questions, because in the footage, they can't tell you the story. So they need that shit as like cartilage to connect the bones. But our guys, like, because of all the podcasting, as soon as they turn those cameras on, they could just fucking talk. As long as, they didn't have to memorize a fucking script. They just be themselves and fucking talk about Ming or talk about comics. Boom, they were off and running. So I love that. Like, as a talker for a living, that was like the highest compliment somebody could pay my friends. It'd be like, these fuckers know how to talk more than most people. I was like, right? That's why I love them. They're such talkers. So I don't know, I'm over talking. What else we got?
So what are some of the advantages of moving to the midnight time slot?
Well, we started, let me see, season 1
Right after Walking Dead.
used to be Walking Dead, Comic Book Men, then Talking Dead, which I never understood. Because it was like, you're done watching The Walking Dead, you want to watch The Talking Dead. But they staggered it because of the satellite, because it was live on both coasts. So it gave people an extra hour to watch the show, Walking Dead, and then come back for Talking Dead and stuff. So that was season 1. Season 2, they were like, hey, we're going to do it walking, talking, and then Comic Book Men at midnight. We were like, fucking great, man. We're a midnight show, though? And then it didn't matter because I was like, my people, they're up at all hours watching TV anyway. And like Adult Swim does just fine at fucking midnight. So I was like, great, midnight. As long as we're behind the Walking, Talking Dead, who gives a shit? So that was season 2A, and they told us in season 2B we're going to do this other experiment where we start a new night of programming, looking for Thursday, and we're going to start with you and 2 other unscripted shows. So I was like, okay, fantastic. So they moved us to Thursday, and our ratings went in the toilet right away. And these cats weren't like, you're fucking finished. We were scared. I was just like, are we done? They're like, no, this was our experiment. We're trying something new. We're trying to build it. Like, you can't expect results on fucking week 1 or whatever. They said, we're going to double book the show, though. We're also going to air it on Sundays after Talking Dead, just see what happens. And then the Sunday airings after Talking Dead were pulling a stronger rating than the Thursday original airing, so they were like, let's go back to where we belong. And that's what you saw a lot of on Twitter and Facebook when we moved to Thursdays. People were like, I used to like watching fucking Walking, Talking, and You. It's just geek night all the way through. Why'd you move? As if I had a choice. So thankfully AMC, we sweated that whole season because we were like, we're not coming back. The ratings don't dictate it. But they were like, no, man, the show pulls a good enough number, particularly if we double book it. And the show is inexpensive. It's unscripted, so it's not like you spend a lot of money shooting this show in an existing location like the Stash. So at that point, they were like, look, don't worry about it. This is us. We're figuring shit out. We'll let you know what's going to go on for next year. When they called us to tell us that they were renewing us for season 3, at first we were like, thank God. And then second, we were like, they were so sweet. They were like, and it's 90% sure, but you're probably going back behind the deads. And we were like, oh my God, thank you. And if we have to do the heavy lifting by ourselves, obviously you could see from last season, we couldn't do it. Getting people to come to Thursday night, they were watching other shit. But if you're on right after those fucking 2 massive juggernauts of shows, I mean, I know to some level that means that I'm never figuring out if I can carry my own weight in television, but it's tough enough carrying my own weight in the real world. I'll happily hitch my wagon to the fucking star of Walking Dead if it makes shit a little bit easier. And it did. So being at midnight, I will never complain about. And I would never even complain about being on Thursday. Being on TV at all is great. But Thursday was tough. We had nothing. We were the engine. On Sundays, Walking Dead's the engine, Talking Dead and Comic Book Men, connect up and trail behind it. On Thursday nights, Comic Book Men was the engine, and we just weren't a strong enough locomotive at that point. So I'm very happy to be at midnight.
So on that note,
Is that it? Anybody else not get one out? Go ahead.
Is there a comic that's made you cry?
Oh, fuck yes.
What's your best?
Hands down, let me see. The Dark Knight Returns always makes me cry. The splash page from Born Again, Daredevil Born Again, Frank Miller's Born Again, where Karen Page is about to be killed. She's trying to get one last fix, and all of a sudden, boom, dude gets hit by the billy club, and she looks up, and the next page, I can already feel I'm starting to get glassy up. You turn that page, and there he is holding her, and she's in tears, and he's not in costume. He's got the beard and like a fucking Michael J. Fox bubble coat on and shit like that. But it's like one of the greatest panels in comedy. It's a full-page splash page, but that one does it for me all the time, man.
Quick question. Who
Yes.
would you cast as Batman if you were doing the Man of Steel?
If I would cast Affleck, I mean, I'm an Affleck fan. My only problem with Man of Steel is I would have cast Affleck as Superman and Batman. Have him fought himself, man. That's my ultimate movie. Batman is fucking Ben Affleck. Superman is Ben Affleck.
That one's been.
all right, guys, we're gonna have to pull Kevin.
Thank
All
you
good?
so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Good talking to you. Enjoy the
Thank
con
you.
and whatnot.
So we're gonna do.
Here we go.
I can talk very naturally.